The cargo ship Defiant Spirit moved slowly through the black of space, its hull scratched and dented from years of hard work. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his worn pilot's chair, watching the stars drift by. His hands were rough from fixing broken equipment, and his uniform had seen better days. Behind him, his small crew worked quietly at their stations. Lisa Kane checked their course to Kepler 442b for the third time. The young navigator had learned to be careful. One mistake, and the alien officials would find them, or worse. Pete Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands as he finished repairs on the engine. The old machine ran hot, but it was all they could afford. Amy Bell listened to radio chatter from other ships, most of it complaints about humans causing delays or making errors. How? Much longer? Jake asked. 2 hours to the mining colony, Lisa replied. Should be a simple drop-off. Jake nodded. Nothing was ever simple when dealing with the other species in the galaxy. Humans had joined the Galactic Confederation almost 200 years ago, but they were still treated like children. The aliens gave them the jobs nobody else wanted, moving cargo, cleaning stations, mining rocks on dead worlds. The alien races called humans emotionally unstable and primitive. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable. So humans got the worst routes, the oldest ships, and the lowest pay. Jake had learned not to argue. Arguing only made things worse. The mining colony appeared on their screens as a small collection of gray buildings on a brown planet. Ships came and went, carrying raw materials to the inner systems where the important aliens lived. Jake guided his ship to the landing pad, feeling the familiar weight of another planet's gravity. Remember, Jake told his crew as they prepared to unload, keep your heads down, don't talk back, we just want to finish this job and leave. The mining colony was like dozens of others Jake had visited. Human workers in dirty uniforms hauled equipment and sorted materials under the watch of tall, thin aliens with blue skin and 4 arms. The Zephyrians ran most of the mining operations in this sector. They looked down at humans literally and figuratively. Jake and his crew unloaded boxes of food, medical supplies, and machine parts. The work was hot and tiring, but they had done it countless times before. Everything was going normally until Jake heard shouting from across the compound. A group of human workers had gathered around one of their own. A young man lay on the ground, blood running from a cut on his head. Standing over him was a Zephyrian overseer holding a metal rod. This worker was moving too slowly, the alien announced in its clicking voice. This is what happens when humans waste our time. The injured worker tried to sit up. I was carrying what you told me to carry. The box was too heavy for one person. The Zephyrian raised the rod again. Humans always make excuses. Jake felt his blood getting hot. He had seen this before on other worlds. The aliens treated humans like animals, beating them for the smallest mistakes. Part of him wanted to walk away. Getting involved would only bring trouble. But as he watched the young worker bleeding on the ground, something inside him snapped. Hey, Jake called out, walking toward the group. Leave him alone. The Zephyrian turned its 4 eyes toward Jake. This does not concern you, cargo hauler. That man is hurt. He needs medical help. He needs to learn discipline. Humans are lazy and stupid. Sometimes pain teaches what words cannot. Jake stepped closer. He could feel Lisa, Pete, and Amy behind. Him, tense and worried. You can't just beat people like that. The Zephyrian made a sound like laughter. I can do whatever is necessary to maintain order. You humans forget your place too easily. Before Jake could respond, another voice cut through the air. What is the problem here? Everyone turned to see a tall figure approaching. The newcomer wore the black robes of a Confederation arbiter, one of the officials who enforced galactic law. This one was a Veltari, with gray skin and large black eyes. Jake recognized him as Veltar, an arbiter who had a reputation for disliking humans. Arbiter Veltar, the Zephyrian overseer said, suddenly more respectful. This human worker was not meeting productivity standards. I was providing corrective instruction. Veltar looked at the injured human, then at Jake. And you, Captain. Morrison, why are you interfering with colony operations? Jake was surprised the Arbiter knew his name. That man is bleeding. This isn't correction, it's abuse. Abuse? Veltar tilted his head. The Confederation has clear guidelines for worker discipline. The Zephyrians are within their legal rights. Legal rights to beat people? Legal rights to maintain order and productivity. Perhaps you have forgotten that humans exist in Confederation space by our grace. You are here because we allow it. Jake felt his crew moving closer behind him. The injured worker was still on the ground and nobody was helping him. Other human workers watched from a distance, afraid to get involved. This isn't right, Jake said quietly. Right and wrong are human concepts, Veltar replied. The Confederation operates on order and efficiency. Humans who cannot adapt to our standards are free to leave our space anytime they wish. The threat was clear. Humans had no independent colonies, no trade agreements with non-Confederation species. Being expelled from Confederation space meant death for most human settlements. Jake looked at the injured worker, then at the Zephyrian overseer who was still holding the metal rod. He wanted to do something, but he knew Veltar was right. Humans had no power here. They survived only because the aliens let them. Help him up, Jake said to Pete. We'll take him to our medical kit. The worker stays here, the Zephyrian overseer said. He has not finished his shift. He's bleeding from his head. He can bleed and work, humans are sturdy. Jake started to move toward the injured man, but Veltar stepped in his way. Captain Morrison, I suggest you return to your ship. Complete your delivery and leave this world. Any further interference will be noted in your record. And what happens? Then you discover how difficult it becomes for humans with bad records to find work in Confederation space. Jake stared at the Arbiter, then at the Overseer, then at the young worker who was slowly getting to his feet despite his injury. Everything in Jake's body wanted to fight, to grab that metal rod and show the Zephyrian how it felt to be beaten. But he had a crew to think about. He had a ship to maintain. He had bills to pay and people depending on him. Come on, Jake said to his crew. Let's finish unloading. They worked in silence after that, moving boxes and equipment while the human workers went back to their jobs. The injured man kept working too, blood still wet on his face. Nobody talked about what had happened. Nobody wanted to make things worse. As they prepared to leave, Jake watched the mining operation from the cockpit of his ship. Humans moved like robots, afraid to rest, afraid to complain, afraid to be human. The Zephyrian overseers watched everything, ready to punish any sign of weakness or independence. This is wrong, Amy said quietly. We can't just leave them like this. What choice do we have? Lisa asked. If we cause trouble, they'll ban us from this sector. Then we can't even bring them supplies. Jake started the engines and lifted off from the brown planet. As Kepler 442b fell away below them, he thought about the young worker's blood on the ground. He thought about Veltar's cold eyes and the Zephyrian's metal rod. He thought about 200 years of humans being treated like animals. Something was building inside Jake Morrison, something hot and angry and dangerous. He had felt it growing for years, watching humans suffer while aliens prospered. Today it had gotten stronger. Today it had become harder to ignore. The defiant spirit jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew away from another world where humans learned to be ashamed of being human. But Jake Morrison was beginning to wonder how much more shame his species could swallow before it turned into something else entirely. 3 weeks after leaving Kepler 442b, Jake Morrison received a message that changed everything. The communication came through encrypted channels, using old Earth military codes that most people had forgotten. The message was simple. Report to Titan Station. Bring your crew. Tell no one. Jake had heard whispers about Titan Station. It was supposed to be a research facility near Saturn, studying ice formations and atmospheric conditions. But cargo pilots sometimes spoke in quiet, voices about ships that went to Titan and came back different, ships with new equipment and crews who asked fewer questions about their orders. The defiant spirit approached Saturn 3 days later. Titan looked normal from space, with its orange atmosphere and frozen surface. But as they got closer, Jake saw things that were not on any official map. Hidden docks carved into the moon's ice, ships that looked like cargo haulers but moved like military vessels, and structures that definitely were not research stations. A voice crackled over their radio. "Defiant Spirit, this is Titan Control. Follow the guidance beam to Dock 7. Tell your crew to keep their mouths shut." The dock was inside the moon, hidden beneath kilometers of ice and rock. Jake had never seen anything like it. The space was huge, filled with ships and equipment that looked far more advanced than anything humans were supposed to have. Workers moved quickly and quietly, loading supplies and making repairs. A woman in a military uniform met them at the airlock. She was older than Jake, with gray hair and scars on her hands. Her uniform had no markings, but she carried herself like someone used to giving orders. "Captain Morrison, I'm Admiral Kate Phillips. We need to talk." She led Jake and his crew through corridors that looked more like a military base than a research station. They passed rooms full of computers, laboratories with equipment Jake did not recognize, and training areas where people practiced with weapons he had never seen before. "What is this place?" Jake asked. "This is what humanity has been building while the Confederation thought we were just hauling their garbage," Admiral Phillips replied. "We call it Protocol Prometheus. It's what we do when we get tired of being treated like animals." They entered a briefing room where other people were waiting. Jake recognized some faces from other cargo crews, but they looked different now. Harder, more focused, like they had found something worth fighting for. Admiral Phillips activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked human colonies and settlements. Blue dots showed Confederation strongholds. The red dots were surrounded by blue ones. "The situation is worse than most humans know," Phillips began. "The Confederation Council has been planning something called the Human Relocation Initiative. They want to move all humans to isolated sectors where they can control us completely." Amy Bell raised her hand. "Relocation? Why?" "Because we make them nervous. We ask too many questions. We fight back when they hurt us. They want us concentrated, where they can watch us." Lisa Kane studied the display. "How do you know all this?" Phillips smiled grimly. "Because we have people in places the Confederation never imagined humans could reach. We have been watching and learning for 20 years. Another person entered the room. Jake recognized him as Colonel Marcus Stone, though he had never met the man personally. Stone had a reputation among cargo pilots as someone who had disappeared into the military and never came back. "The relocation starts in 6 months, Stone said without introduction. "After that, any human found outside the designated zones will be arrested for their own protection. The camps they are building are not places you come back from." Jake felt cold despite the warm air in the room. "What can we do? We have cargo ships and mining equipment. They have battle fleets." "That's what they think," Phillips said. "Show them, Colonel." Stone activated another display. This one showed technical specifications for ships and weapons that looked nothing like the old equipment Jake knew. The numbers were impressive even to someone who did not understand all the details. "For 50 years we have been sending our brightest people to work on Confederation projects," Stone explained. "They learned everything: physics, engineering, tactics, psychology. Then we brought that knowledge home and improved on it." "You have been spying on them?" "We have been surviving. Every human scientist working on alien technology has been copying information. Every human pilot flying Confederation routes has been mapping their defenses. Every human worker in their factories has been learning how their equipment works." Pete. Rodriguez looked confused. "But they watch everything we do." "They watch what they think is important," Phillips said. "They never imagined that cargo haulers could be intelligence agents. They never thought human janitors were saboteurs. They see us as stupid and harmless." Stone touched the display again. New images appeared showing ships under construction in hidden facilities. "We have been building our own fleet, ships designed by humans for human crews, fast, tough, and equipped with weapons they have never seen before." Jake stared at the images. "How many ships?" "Enough," Phillips said. "The question is not whether we can fight them. The question is whether we should." Should? They are planning to put us in camps. Fighting means revealing everything we have built. It means showing the galaxy that humans are not the harmless primitives they believe us to be. Once we start this, there is no going back. The room fell quiet. Jake thought about the young worker bleeding on Kepler 442b. He thought about years of insults and abuse. He thought about his crew working twice as hard for half the pay just because they were human. What would fighting look like? He asked. Colonel Stone smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. It would look like showing them what happens when you corner a species that evolved by fighting everything on a death world. Phillips activated a new display showing battle plans. We do not fight their way. We do not line up fleets and trade shots. We fight like humans. We hit them where they are weak. We make them afraid to leave their home systems. We show them that oppressing humanity costs more than they can afford to pay. Amy Bell leaned forward. What do you need from us? Cargo pilots know every route in the galaxy. You know where their supply lines are vulnerable. You know which stations depend on regular deliveries. You can get close to targets without raising suspicion. Jake nodded slowly. You want us to become saboteurs? I want you to become free, Phillips said. The choice is yours. You can go back to hauling cargo and pretending that things will get better. Or you can help us show the galaxy what humanity really is. Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was young, but brave. Pete was good with machines and better with explosives. Amy understood communications and computer systems. They had worked together for 3 years, trusting each other with their lives on dangerous routes. If we do this, Jake said, what happens to the other humans, the ones in the colonies and mining stations? That depends on how quickly we can make the Confederation understand that the old way of doing things is over, Stone replied. The longer this takes, the more humans suffer. But if we can make them afraid enough, fast enough, they might decide that negotiating is better than fighting. Phillips stood up. I need an answer. The relocation initiative starts in 6 months. If we are going to act, it has to be soon. Jake thought about the metal rod in the Zephyrian's hands. He thought about Veltar's cold eyes and casual threats. He thought about 200 years of humans bowing their heads and accepting whatever treatment the aliens decided to give them. What do you need us to do? I need you to disappear, Phillips said. Officially, the Defiant Spirit will be reported as lost during a routine cargo run. Your crew will be listed as casualties. But really, you will be working for us, hitting targets and gathering intelligence. And after that? Colonel Stone's smile returned. After that, we see if the galaxy is ready to learn that humanity's patience has limits. Jake looked at his crew one more time. They nodded, each of them understanding what they were choosing. They were choosing to stop being victims. They were choosing to fight back. When do we start? Now, Phillips said. Welcome to the war the Confederation never saw coming. Outside the hidden base, Saturn's rings continued their ancient dance around the gas giant. But inside Titan's ice, humanity was preparing to dance to a very different tune. The galaxy was about to learn that cornering humans was the kind of mistake you only make once. The message came from Earth on a cold morning in space. President Helen Carter's voice was calm, but her words made everyone on the hidden bases stop what they were doing. The Confederation has given us 30 days to comply with the human relocation initiative. After that, they will use force to move our people to the camps. Admiral Phillips stood in the command center on Titan, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. Human colonies were already seeing Confederation ships gathering nearby. The aliens were not being subtle about their threats. 30 days, Colonel Stone said quietly. Not much time to change the galaxy. It's enough, Phillips replied. Send the activation signal. All units, all targets, all at once. Operation Phoenix begins now. Across human space, cargo ships that had been reported lost suddenly came back to life. Mining equipment that should have been digging rocks started moving in very different directions. Transport vessels loaded with supplies took new routes to unexpected destinations. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, but the Defiant Spirit looked nothing like the old cargo hauler it used to be. Hidden panels had opened to reveal weapon systems and sensor arrays. The engines had been upgraded with technology that made the ship faster than most Confederation military vessels. His crew wore new uniforms and carried equipment that would have impressed regular Navy officers. Target confirmed, Lisa said from her navigation station. Zephyrian Supply Depot, just like the mission briefing. Weapons ready, Pete reported. He had learned to use the new systems quickly, turning his knowledge of engines into expertise with plasma cannons. All communications jammed, Amy added. They won't be calling for help. Jake looked at the space station on his screen. It was one of dozens of facilities that kept Confederation forces supplied throughout this sector. Destroying it would leave enemy ships without fuel and spare parts for weeks. Remember the plan, Jake said. Hit hard, hit fast, and get out before they know what happened. The attack lasted less than 10 minutes. The Defiant Spirit and 3 other disguised human ships struck the depot from different angles, overwhelming its defenses. They destroyed fuel tanks, supply warehouses, and communication centers. By the time Confederation reinforcements arrived, the human ships were already jumping to hyperspace. Similar attacks were happening everywhere at once. Colonel Stone led a team that sabotaged the main shipyard in the Vorthen system, turning billion credit warships into expensive scrap metal. Other human teams hit trade routes, communication networks, and military bases. The pattern was always the same. Strike fast, cause maximum damage, and disappear before the enemy could respond. The aliens had never faced anything like this. Their wars were formal affairs with rules and treaties. Armies met in open space, exchanged fire according to established procedures, and the loser surrendered with dignity. They did not understand enemies who refused to fight fair. Within a week, Confederation space was in chaos. Supply lines were broken. Military units could not communicate with their commanders. Civilian shipping stopped moving because nobody knew where the next attack would come from. On the Confederation capital world, emergency sessions were held every day. The alien leaders could not understand what was happening. How had humans acquired such advanced technology? Where were the attacks coming from? Why were their intelligence services unable to track the human forces? Arbiter Veltar stood before the Confederation Council, his gray skin darker than usual with stress. The human attacks are coordinated across 17 sectors. They are using technology we have never seen before. Our fleets cannot catch them. Impossible, declared High Chancellor Zekvar, a tall alien with 4 arms and a voice like grinding stone. Humans are primitives. They lack the intelligence for such operations. Tell that to the crews of the 12 stations they destroyed yesterday, Veltar replied. Or the supply convoys that never reached their destinations. Or the communication hub that has been sending false orders for 3 days. The council chamber filled with worried voices. These aliens had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but they had never dealt with an enemy like humanity. Their experience was with civilized species who followed the rules of war. Meanwhile, humanity was writing new rules. Dr. Sophie Grant worked in a secret laboratory beneath the ice of Europa. She had been studying alien biology for 20 years, learning how their bodies and minds worked. Now she was using that knowledge in ways the aliens never expected. The psychological weapon is ready, she reported to Admiral Phillips through encrypted communication. We call it Pandora's box. Explain, Phillips said. Most alien species maintain emotional stability through biochemical regulation. They literally cannot feel strong anger or fear without artificial enhancement. We have developed a compound that disrupts those systems. You want to make them angry? I want to make them human. For the first time in their evolution, they will experience uncontrolled emotions. The psychological impact will be devastating. Phillips was quiet for a moment. Deploy it on 3 core worlds. Let's see how they handle feeling what we feel every day. The results exceeded every expectation. When Pandora's box was released into the atmosphere of 3 major Confederation worlds, the effects were immediate and catastrophic. Aliens who had never experienced rage suddenly felt fury they could not control. Species that had evolved beyond fear found themselves paralyzed by terror. On the Vorthon homeworld, government officials locked themselves in bunkers, afraid to make decisions. On Zephyrian Prime, The normally calm population rioted in the streets, destroying property and fighting each other. The Third World, home to the peaceful Meltari, saw its entire government collapse as leaders fled in panic from emotions they could not understand. The psychological warfare was more effective than any physical attack. These species had built their entire civilizations on emotional control and rational thinking. When that foundation cracked, everything else fell apart, but humanity was not finished. Commander Gary Willis led the human fleet that appeared at the edge of the Confederation capital system. 50 ships, all of them modified cargo vessels and mining ships, all of them crewed by humans who had decided they were tired of being afraid. They did not attack immediately. Instead, they waited. President Carter's voice broadcast across all frequencies in the system. People of the Confederation, you have 30 days to release all humans from your relocation centers. You have 30 days to recognize human colonies as independent territories. You have 30 days to end 2 centuries of oppression. And, if we refuse, came the response from High Chancellor Zekvar. Then you learn why evolution made us this way, Carter replied. The human fleet settled into positions around the capital system, not close enough to threaten the planet directly, but close enough to stop all traffic in or out. Every day more human ships arrived. Every day, President Carter repeated her message. The Confederation tried to break the blockade with their most advanced warships. The results were shocking. Human ships did not retreat when outgunned. Instead, they accelerated toward the enemy vessels, turning every battle into a potential suicide mission. Confederation captains trained in civilized warfare found themselves facing enemies who preferred mutual destruction to surrender. After losing 6 major warships to human vessels, 1/10 their size, the Confederation fleet pulled back to defensive positions. The human blockade held. On Titan, Admiral Phillips watched reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human attacks had crippled Confederation infrastructure in 40 systems. Alien governments were falling as their populations struggled with emotions they had never experienced. The blockade of the capital system had lasted 2 weeks with no sign of breaking. They're requesting negotiations, Colonel Stone reported. Phillips smiled. Good. Tell them we'll talk when they release our people from the camps. And if they refuse? Phillips looked at the tactical display showing human forces positioned throughout Confederation space. Every red dot represented humans who had decided to stop being victims. Every red dot was a reminder that humanity had been underestimated for the last time. Then we show them that this was just the warning shot, she said. The real fire comes next. In the darkness of space, human ships waited, like wolves surrounding a flock of sheep. The galaxy was about to learn that cornering humanity had consequences that lasted forever. The meeting took place on a neutral station at the edge of Confederation space. President Helen Carter sat across from the alien leaders who had spent 2 centuries treating humanity like servants. The room was quiet except for the hum of life, support systems, and the distant sound of ships moving through the docking bays. High Chancellor Zekvar looked older than when this had all started. His forearms moved nervously and his voice shook when he spoke. Your attacks have caused tremendous damage across our territory. Billions of beings are suffering because of your actions. Billions of humans have been suffering for 200 years, Carter replied calmly. The difference is that now everyone is paying attention. Arbiter Veltar leaned forward. His gray skin was pale, and his large black eyes showed fear that Carter had never seen in aliens before. What you have done is impossible. Humans are not supposed to possess such technology or tactical knowledge. We are not supposed to do many things, Carter said. We are not supposed to question authority. We are not supposed to defend ourselves. We are not supposed to be equal to other species. But here we are. The alien leaders exchanged glances. They had called this meeting because their civilization was falling apart. Human attacks had destroyed critical infrastructure across dozens of systems. The psychological weapon had left 3 core worlds in chaos, their populations unable to function with emotions they could not control. Most importantly, the human blockade had trapped the Confederation leadership on their capital world for 3 weeks. We are prepared to discuss terms, Zekvar said quietly. I am listening, Carter replied. We will release all humans from the relocation centers. We will recognize human colonies as autonomous territories within Confederation space. We will provide reparations for past grievances. Carter shook her head. That is not enough. What more do you want? We are offering you everything you asked for. You are offering to go back to the way things were before you tried to put us in camps. That is not acceptable. The old way of doing things is over. Veltar's voice rose with frustration. Then what do you want? I want the galaxy to understand that humanity is not a minor species to be managed and controlled. I want every alien child to learn that humans are equals, not servants. I want the Confederation restructured so that no species ever faces what we have faced. Impossible. The Confederation has existed for 10,000 years. Our systems have brought peace and stability to the galaxy. Your systems have brought peace for you, Carter corrected. They have brought oppression for everyone else. How many other species have you crushed before they could resist? How many civilizations have you destroyed because they did not fit your definition of acceptable? The alien leaders were quiet. They had never considered these questions because they had never needed to. They were the dominant powers in the galaxy, and dominance had always been enough. The human blockade of our capital system must end, Zekvar demanded. Our government cannot function with your ships controlling our space. The blockade ends when we have an agreement that ensures this never happens again, Carter replied. Not before. Admiral Phillips appeared on a communication screen from her flagship. President Carter, we have movement in the outer system. Confederation fleet units are massing for an attack on our positions. Carter looked at the alien leaders. I thought we were negotiating. Those ships are not under our direct control, Veltar said quickly. Local commanders may be acting independently. Call them off. We have tried. Communications with our military units have been disrupted by your attacks. Many commanders are operating without orders. Carter stood up. Then this meeting is over. You had your chance to end this peacefully. Wait, Zekvar called out. Please, give us more time to establish control. You have had 200 years to establish control over your treatment of humans. You used that time to make things worse. Now you want more time to figure out how to make us go back to being victims. Carter activated her own communication device. Admiral Phillips, implement Operation Wildfire. Phillips nodded. All units, this is Admiral Phillips. Operation Wildfire is authorized. Show them what humanity really is. Across the galaxy, every human ship in space received the same message at the same time. Jake Morrison heard it on the bridge of the Defiant Spirit as his crew prepared for what they knew would be their most dangerous mission. All stations, this is the final warning, came President Carter's voice over the communication system. The Confederation has chosen to continue fighting rather than negotiate in good faith. They still believe they can force humanity back into submission. They are about to learn otherwise. The human fleet around the Confederation capital system spread out into attack formation. Commander Gary Willis led his squadron of converted cargo ships toward the massive space stations that controlled traffic throughout the system. Other human vessels moved toward communication relays, defense platforms, and government facilities, but they did not attack with weapons. Instead, they broadcast a message that every being in the system could hear. President Carter's voice filled the communication channels, telling the story of 2 centuries of human oppression. She described the camps, the beatings, the systematic destruction of human dignity. She played recordings of Confederation officials discussing humans like animals to be managed. The psychological impact was immediate. Species that had never questioned the Confederation's treatment of humans suddenly heard the truth. Many of them realized that if it could happen to humanity, it could happen to them. On the alien worlds affected by Pandora's box, the chaos was getting worse. Beings who had never felt real anger were discovering what it meant to be furious about injustice. For the first time in their history, they understood why humans had always seemed so emotional and unpredictable. The Confederation military tried to break the human blockade with their largest warships. The battle was swift and decisive. Human ships used tactics that no civilized species had ever considered. They rammed enemy vessels. They detonated their own reactors to take out multiple targets. They fought like beings who had nothing left to lose. After losing half their fleet in one day, the Confederation commanders requested a ceasefire. 3 days later, President Carter returned to the negotiating table. The alien leaders looked broken. Their government was collapsing. Their military had been humiliated. Their core worlds were in chaos. Most importantly, they had lost the fear and respect that had kept other species obedient for thousands of years. "We accept your terms," Zekfor said quietly. "All of them? The Confederation will be restructured as the Galactic Alliance. All member species will have equal representation. Humans will have veto power over Alliance decisions. Your colonies will be fully independent. The relocation camps will be destroyed." Carter nodded. "And the rest?" "Every school in Alliance space will teach about the human struggle for freedom. Every government official will study the consequences of oppression. Every military officer will learn that some enemies prefer death to surrender." Veltar looked at Carter with something that might have been respect. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the first time one of your people told a human to know their place," Carter replied. "You created this fire when you decided we were less than you. Now it burns until the galaxy changes." 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Unbroken, watching human and alien ships working together to patrol a trade route. His crew wore the uniforms of the new Human Defense Force, and alien captains called him Sir when they spoke to him. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Species that had spent millennia believing in their own superiority now understood that evolution had given every race something valuable. For humans, that something was the refusal to accept defeat. President Carter looked out at Earth's orbital defense platforms from her office window. Admiral Phillips had asked her if they had gone too far, if the price of freedom had been too high. Carter's answer had been simple. "They thought our fire was weakness. They learned it was strength. Now they know that pushing humanity too far means everyone burns." The galaxy was at peace, but it was a different kind of peace. It was peace built on respect rather than fear, on equality rather than dominance. And every alien child who learned about the human war understood the most important lesson of all. Some species will fight to the death for their freedom, and humanity was one of them. Humanity's final warning to the galaxy had been fire, and the galaxy had chosen to listen.